It's been an awful long time since the days when I called you mine. I know, I gotta let go. Think back to you every day still. Wonder if you do the same. I know, I know. Oh, I know it's been way too long. Oh, I still wait for your name on my phone. You're always gonna make my day better. I'll always remember us to be better. Oh, that we really were. I know. You look through me like glass in the hall. No, you don't see me at all. Oh, I know. I gotta let go. Oh, I know it's been way too long. Oh, I still wait for your name on my phone. You're always gonna make my day better. I'll always remember us to be better. Oh,
Good morning, everyone, wherever you are. Welcome. Might be evening, might be afternoon, and here it is, eight o'clock in the morning in New Zealand, Whangarei, beautiful Whangarei, New Zealand. And with me today, I have Scott Neitlich. I'm gonna probably get that wrong, right? I'll probably butcher it straight away. Scott from Spector Creative from North Carolina. Um, Are you there, Scott? It seems like a
Yeah.
stall or something. Oh, sorry, he was
Yep.
just so quick. So without further ado, would you like to just give a short bio, and I'll put you on solo and get a bit of information about who you are, and then we'll get into your amazing, not only your amazing podcast, but your website and all the amazing stuff that you create, and that some people might not know of, but I mean, it's just amazing to see what you've been up to. So give me one sec here, and there you go.
Yeah, no, and thank you so much for having me on. It's always great to talk, fun, geeky, toy, comic, pop culture stuff. It's not like I sit around talking about that with my wife and daughter. So yeah, hi, I'm Scott. The last name is Neitlich. I know it's a tough one. It's like two words, Night and Lick.
Right.
And I've been in the toy industry for about 25 years, a good chunk of that at Mattel, running a lot of adult collector cool lines, DC, He-Man, Back to the Future. Spent some time at other companies, Jada, Jax Pacific, Entertainment Earth, and for the last couple of years, kind of leading back down through the pandemic, I have been the creative director at Spector Creative, which you can find us at spectorcreative.com, and I offer consulting services to help inventors, toy companies, actually even non-toy companies. I do a lot of different products, but a lot of people who have sort of toyish ideas and need help developing them for market, branding, retail development, content development. And most excitedly, we just published our very first original graphic novel, Myth Wars, which is available now on Amazon. So that's really fantastic. It's a original, fully illustrated kind of kids graphic novel about Greek mythology. So lots of cool stuff going on.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So yeah, I mean, like as a comic book creator myself, and also, keen on comic toys, for one of our characters, I'm quite excited to talk about that. And like, I'm always surrounded by toys, and I'm always thinking I should stop. I really should stop. And then I go see something, and I'm like, oh look, okay, I think I need that at home. I'm like, what am I going to do with it? It's like, oh, we'll just put it there. And so I think it's such joy to grow up with toys, being young. And in our home, we had, when we needed them, we had them. We couldn't like go and pick, I want that, and that, well, you got that. What was it like for you? What got you into toys?
Well, I mean, like all of us as kids, I was playing with toys, and I think it really was a combination of nostalgia and new content, kind of in the '90s, when I was transitioning from being a kid to a teenager, or a player of toys to a collector.
Yeah.
And well, the Kenner Hasbro had just put out the Power of the Force 2 line for Star Wars, and it was the first time in 10
Right.
years that it's amazing to think there was a time when Star Wars was not available at mass retail. There was like nothing. It was like bendy figures and like mugs. So the nostalgia of collecting Star Wars when I was a kid and being able to buy into this modern line, and then that kind of followed up with a lot of new content, Justice League Unlimited, the 2000X He-Man show, and just lots of cool things that had toys. And I just kind of realized I really enjoy this, and it's a great way to feel young again. And it's all about acquisition and accomplishment. You feel like, oh, I have this set, I have, and and then I was very fortunate to have followed my career into it, and let my passion for toy collecting also drive a lot of my career, and it's been very rewarding. And toys are a happy thing. It's been great all around.
Yeah, that's what I find about toys. Like, every time I see one, my eyes blow up. And like, I saw this the other day, right? And I was like, instantly was reminded of like the '80s straight away. Watching Chips, California Highway Patrol. I'm like, and next thing I know, there's a remote with it. I'm like, there's a piece broken. I don't care. I didn't even think about the piece broken. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is like, it reminds me of watching Pancho, and the other guy and everybody, I mean, like, my memories were shocking because of head injuries, but I do know the toy for it, and that sort of nostalgia. And, I think just that whole tie to your youth is kind of like, and then watching you go into it. I've got a friend who's actually has been working at, he used to work at, is it Vanguard, or as well as like Mattel and Hasbro? Has been working at Hasbro, Hawk Senders, and so I get a lot of information about toys and about stuff that we could do for us. But like, as someone in your capacity, when did you actually decide I am going to go into this as a job?
Well, I mean, it really just kind of happened by accident.
Right.
I'd been applying to like local toy companies right after I graduated, did my undergraduate work in Santa Barbara,
Mm.
and using using a lot of my contacts to try to get informational interviews. But it wasn't until after I had 5 years of professional experience and an actual portfolio that I was able to get a job, because I had equivalent work, if you will,
Right.
more or less. So, but yeah, I mean, I right after college, I had wanted to get into toys or into animation, movies, and that's what I was passionate about. So I figured,
Yeah.
why not there?
Were you like, did you start designing toys or drawing toys when before looking to work, or like at college or at high school or middle school?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, in fact, not that I want to, I don't want to keep go back to Myth Wars, but I
Yeah.
wrote this before Mattel in
Okay.
2001, and I wrote it as a property to develop into a toy line. I actually
Right.
thought that was how I was going to get into toys, was I was going to publish this and make this cartoon show, and then
Yeah.
that show would get popular and want to get licensed for toys. So yeah, even when writing it pre-Mattel, I was putting what are called toyetic elements into the
Right.
content, which is actually really goes to what I do with my consulting. Is that's what I help people do when they're developing content, is making
Well,
sure that it'll translate.
What do you mean by toyetic? Because I was looking at the website just before, and like that's one of the things that you mentioned there. Uh, you know, let me just this one here. Let me see if I'm on the right page. Yeah. So, what do you mean by that? For those people, like myself, who don't know what that means.
Yeah, no, great question. It's what I love explaining it, because then it's like, oh, that makes sense. So the term toyetic means developing content, whether it's live action, animated, or even just radio, audio, whatever,
Right.
whatever your medium, however you want to express yourself, comic books, novels.
Mm,
It's infusing that content with
right.
elements that will translate easily into consumer product. So let
Mm,
me give you an example. Power Rangers, right?
right.
I'm not a huge personal Power Rangers fan, but 100% get the property.
Yeah.
So you've got 5 Rangers or 6, when the green guy comes around, and they basically all have the same body. They're just in a different color, right?
Mm,
And yes, I get like the helmets are often different, but the difference between the blue and the red Ranger and the Black Ranger, like just their like the standard body, if you will,
mm,
it's the same body, just with a different head or even with a different color. So
right.
so immediately so if you're the writer of Power Rangers, if you will, you've
Mm,
immediately created characters that are easier to translate into toys versus if all
right.
5 were completely unique and had different body shapes.
Right.
Ninja Turtles, another great example. They all
Mm,
share the same body. They just had a different head and different colored armbands.
yeah.
Very easy to turn into toys versus if one was a turtle, one was a kangaroo, one was a bear, and one was, a wasp or something.
Yeah.
So that's just scratching the surface. From a design perspective, toyetic concepts flow,
Mm,
penetrate if done correctly throughout the project, having aspirational heroes, having light up accessories, having signature vehicles like Luke has his X-wing, if
yeah.
you will. Batman has his Batmobile. So that's what toyetic means. It's working to ensure the content will
Mm,
become better toy product, and the
right.
idea is to bake that in, to write that in from day one, not do, which is what most of Hollywood actually does, is play catch up on the back end. They already have a
Right.
script. They'll give the script to a toy company and say, we'd love to see if you're interested in making toys of our new movie. And then they'll
Mm,
get suggestions from the toy company like, oh, maybe try adding this in, but it's after the fact
yeah.
versus the service I offer helps people develop this stuff from day one, which improves everything. Toys,
Right.
content, enjoyment, all the way.
So when you it's Myth Wars, right? So when you were creating Myth Wars, and designing that as a as something to take and say, hey, this is what I want to do with this, and these are all the image, like the characters or figures, or is it what's sort of like what's the idea behind Myth Wars? Like, is it like what's the genre?
Yeah. So Myth Wars is a retelling of Greek mythology,
Mm,
recasting the Greek gods. Usually the Greek gods are shown as like, these old dudes sitting in thrones with long white beards, judging
yeah.
humanity. Well, going back to the original source material, there was a 10-year universe shattering cosmic battle between
Right.
Zeus and the Olympians and Kronos and the Titans. It's called the
Okay.
Titanophany. Lasted for 10 years. This was fought back when the Greek gods were in their prime. So Myth
Mm,
Wars recasts the Greek gods as teenagers. Instead of being
okay.
old dudes and dudettes on thrones,
Yeah.
they are, you know, action adventure. Like Zeus is a lightning thrower.
Right.
Poseidon has water powers.
Yeah.
Um, Hermes is a speeder. Like Mercury. Um,
Yeah.
so that the basic premise is that it is retelling the origins of Greek mythology as an action
Mhm.
adventure superhero tale, and again, most Greek mythology stories tend to always be the descendants of the gods or the heroes.
Right.
Hercules, Percy Jackson, Theseus, etc. This basically restores the Greek gods as the true heroes, not
Right.
just observers. of Greek mythology. So that's what it's all about.
It's pretty cool concept because like everybody's like, I mean, like, you think of them like it's always the old guys, like you mentioned, or all their descendants, but like actually going backwards and turning them into teens. What did you find interesting, or what was the reasoning to do that? Because like you're at high, like you said, you're younger than, and like creating this. Is it because you're surrounded by other, teenagers or so, your peers, and you thought that would work for that, or what was the reasoning behind that?
Great question. So I wrote it because it was the story that fascinated me. Ever since I
Right.
was a kid, I I mean, every kid kind of goes through that Greek mythology phase.
Mm.
Usually it's it's what gets is the next step is then comic books.
Yeah.
So I'd always read about this, Titanocracy, this great battle, this 10-year cosmic battle between gods and monsters,
Mm.
and I'd always wanted to see it. In fact, like in Disney's Hercules, the animated movie, the whole
Yeah.
opening credit sequence is that battle, but they just
Okay.
do it in like shadow and shape and as narration. And I was
Yeah.
like, that's the story I want to see. You're skipping over the good part. So
Mm.
story-wise, I knew what the story I wanted to tell. And I knew obviously the
Right.
Greek gods had to be younger. Originally, they were just kind of they were in their 20s. The first
Yeah.
draft time I wrote it, they were about 25.
Okay.
But then, and actually, this was still pre-toy industry, but it was also something that I learned in the toy industry. Teenagers are a lot more aspirational to little kids than adults
Yeah.
because adults are seen as authority figures, as old, as
Yeah.
parents. Teenagers are aspirational. You're going to be a teenager soon. They're just out of reach. So that's why I made them teenagers, because
Mm.
it makes them very relatable. The target audience is really 3rd through 7th graders who love
Okay.
it's formatted like Smile and Dogman, like in that, it's not formatted
Yeah.
like a comic you and I would read. Although I am going to put out a hardcover in that format for us.
Sure.
But yeah, but it's also for, people like you and I, the adults who just love this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, for hopefully, it's a great way for kids, a good introduction to both mythology and comic books.
So, like, I mean, you're right in the sense, like, I mean, you're correct in the sense that, when I'm not looking to my dad to inspire me when I'm only a child, because I'm looking at who's the older, who's my older brother or older sister. Well, I'm the opposite, where I'm the oldest in the family, so I have the other ones looking up to me. So I like that. I don't think a lot of us think like that and think about how, like, as the younger ones always look up to the older ones, the next stage up, like middle age look to the high schoolers. And I think I've never even thought about that. Like I've worked with youth, I've worked with 12-year-olds to about up to 30-year-olds in my in my 6 years as youth worker. Hey Nathaniel, thank you for joining us. Hey, if you've got any questions for Scott here, I'd love to hear you. Hear it, and I'll ask it. So yeah, I was just thinking, like, it's kind of interesting to have that sort of thought pattern. Is that something that you went into it thinking that way, or did you, into toys, or did you, you know, sorry, I should rephrase that. Did you already have that thought before you entered toys, or was it doing toys that got you to think like that?
I did have them established as teenagers before I
Mm,
worked at Mattel. Again, basically the 2001 draft, they were 25. In the
right,
2004 draft, they were teenagers. I started at Mattel in 2005, a year later. And
right.
while I was at Mattel, I had to shelve it like anyone would an outside project. When you work for a company like
Yeah,
that, you can't work, but that's fine. I mean, you're giving me a paycheck and the chance to work on He-Man. That's fine. I'll shelve this for 10 years.
yeah,
Um, but being in the toy industry just sort of reconfirmed that. I remember
yeah,
particularly when I was working on the Young Justice line in
right,
Mattel's DC portfolio, and we a lot of selling in that line was the explanation that these characters is Robin is way more aspirational than Batman. Even though Batman's
yeah,
got all the cool gadgets, he's an adult. Robin is the guy who gets to go on the adventures with him and is seen as achievable. Batman's a
yeah.
little out of reach for a 5-year-old, but I could be Robin.
Yeah, I think that's kind of, yeah. That's why I thought, like, it's kind of interesting. You had that thinking there, because I just find that brand new to my understanding of that thing, right? That's why it's just kind of blown away by that. Um, so how long did you like with with the Young Justice range? How long did you work on that and develop that?
Um, I mean, I worked on the Young Justice line. I think it was only the line only lasted at retail a year, maybe a year and a half. So I mean, I pretty much
Okay.
worked on the whole thing from kind of inception to clearance.
Now, with toy development, you've got the guy who designs it. There's an idea person, and then because like something like an IP like Young Justice, the DC's already got the designs already there. How do you go into like think when you go to design, what can you like artistically do to it that they haven't done, or is it do you have to stay rigid to what they've done creatively as as the
Um,
IP holder?
no, I mean, usually, I mean, there's always, compromises between design and functionality. I mean, sometimes characters actually, I mean, speaking of Robin in a different version in Robin in one of I think it was the Batman show,
Yeah.
his legs were so thin they couldn't hold up a figure. So when
Oh,
making an
talking
action
about
figure,
that, like I was just thinking about this morning. This one keeps falling over all the time. There's no way this will, stand up. It's just it's top heavy, and it just will fall over. It's just almost like, I mean, the black uniformed Superman's fine, but this one will never stand up. But it's because of the design, right? There's nothing you can do about it because of the way the character is designed in the animation.
yeah, I mean, it depends on if you're going for a collector version that's going for like aesthetically to recreate that look, knowing
Yeah,
that this is just going to sit on your shelf,
yeah,
or if it's a child plaything, maybe it has to incorporate a giant lever sticking out of the back to activate a mechanism. I
yeah,
mean, there's all, so it's yeah, I mean, you work with the licensor. What kind of product are you making? Who's the end customer?
mm,
But there's always, there's being on model and being on brand, and then
yeah.
there's compromises for product design, I should say.
When I noticed like that there's a recent resurgence of like putting comic books along with figures, like what McFarlane did. Do you think that's something that Hasbro would do with GI Joe? You know, Is it?
Um,
Am I wrong? It is GI Joe that Hasbro that does GI Joe, right? Because I
yeah,
always get
yes.
confused between the Mattel because it's like is it Mattel that does Barbie and then Hasbro that does GI Joe, right? Or is it vice versa? It always confuses. I always feel like I've got like Barbies there, and then I've got some GI Joes. I'm like, I gotta always check the back of them to make sure. So, with is there something like that with with this with the comics coming out that's been a big huge boost for with Duke for Image Comics? you know, um, is Hasbro looking at maybe tying a toy to that along with the comic book, or is that something that I want to do, or is it something they're not thinking about?
I mean, I can tell you in general, as an overview, comic books
Sure.
are not looked at by studios or toy companies as legitimate content.
Okay.
They will look at historic comic books, like trade paperbacks, like Craven's
Mm,
Last Hunter, the Life and Death of Super, something that was like an event
yeah.
that's proven itself in the past as something worthy of toy. But current comic books are looked at as disposable pamphlets by
Right.
studios and toy companies. So what's
Mm,
happening in comic, and it's also happening so rapidly.
yeah.
Toy development takes about 3 years. So what's happening in comic books
Yeah.
right now isn't going to show up on your toy shelf for 2 to 3 years, and by then the comic book could be off in a completely different direction. So that's why current comic books aren't really something that toy companies chase.
Exactly. I think that's why, like, when you look at like with McFarlane, and I got gifted two for my birthday last year when I turned 50, and I got a Joker and I got a Flash from my friend, and who's about the same age as me, and it was like two little 3 inch, 3.5 inch little figures that just statues, right? And they're like the original like number ones. They're not like what's current now, and that's why I think like it's very smart in the thinking they're like because everything changes so fast but like having that number one kind of gets you started. So I was wondering, like, if they put out like a Transformer or a GI Joe book and like put out a number one, people could go back to that, like when it was the first book. And that's why I thought, like, if they put out like a Duke with that, it'll like, even though it's popular, I've been told it's popular, because I'm not a GI Joe fan, because it's for me, I didn't grow up with it, but I've got like American friends who are like die hard, right? I've got like one of my friends who's down in Big Stu, who's down in Borgia, Texas. He's got a toy store, and he's got like that big, I can't even remember the name, or the giant friggin' ship, you
The
know.
flag.
That's it. He's got the flag in his store, and we did a whole stream talking about it, and he showed me around. I'm like, I didn't have that experience of growing up with that, but I did have. My neighbor had like He-Man, so I wasn't a big toy person. I was more like a person who watched the TV show, like Star Trek, and then now I'm collecting the toys. I've got the figures next to me and all around, but I remember. Being able to get one of these as a toy for Christmas one time. Do you remember this? I mean,
Is
it's
that
like
a
it's the Tommytron. Yeah.
yeah, sorry, yeah, the word was like on the tip. I was like, oh, what? Yes.
So I was able to get this, but I wanted the one that I lost. I had mine stolen, which is the Tommytron, which is like from the Tron movie, which is the beige one. So I'm gonna. That's my next hunt down if I really want to hunt for one. How do you see? Do you see with the toy companies going back to that sort of thing? I know there's all these gaming consoles and all that, but do you see them going back to something like this, where handheld, because they've got the switches and all that, but something more visual? Because with Apple doing the goggles, is there something that they're looking at? Do you think they'll be looking at where they can turn something that's more toy orientated and game orientated, between the two?
That's been kind of like one of the three-legged hopes of the toy industry, is basically somehow merging video game apps and toy, somehow
Right.
making a genderless toy, and somehow making a toy that creates physical activity, like replaces running, or
Mm,
and those things just don't exist. They're just
yeah.
completely opposite play patterns. And I mean, there's been disastrous results over the years. Things like Aptivity, and going back to the Power Glove in the 80s. Video
Right.
games and toys, they're not the same product, and because kids buy them both, people are just under the impression that they can be, smashed together. And if
Yeah.
they could, people have had 30 years to figure that out, and we haven't had a single ever. I mean, even action figures based on
Yeah.
video games are they're out there, but they're not the best sellers.
Yeah.
Like you could find a Mario and a Link and Halo, but they've never been big. They've always just been like, a secondary, tertiary brand.
I talking about which, right? So a couple of weeks ago, I found this on one of my hunts, and it's one of these video sort of like tag things. So you have like one of these things on. This is for something else, but this a goggle like this, and then you've got this gun, and then you could program this to how many times it shoots. Whoever's got the belt on, and exactly what you're talking about there with the robot with the teaching thing at the back of it. I just came across it while I was trying to figure out what the hell this was. So this is a Tiger electronics thing from out of Hong Kong or Taiwan, but I noticed, like, it's kind of like after this is like 80s, and then you had this, which is like the 90s, and so that's what I was thinking about, like, how do they merge it, and whether like, with the concept of AI now, right, with the video gaming, is that something that, like, do you think, as if you're thinking futuristically, because of the industry you're in, you're always thinking ahead, like you said, 3 years ahead, you're thinking about that. Do you think that's something that will be incorporated into toys as AI becomes more, more user friendly, and learning in the sense of how to educate? Because my dad yesterday was talking about, like, oh, you don't have to go to school now, because you can have a AI they can answer all the questions for you and teach you. And I'm like, Yeah, but then you lose all the social skills then. He's 80 years old and he's grown up on VIC-20, Atari, all the way from the start to now, right, with the Apple tablet. So do you think that's something that's going to be looked at for toys with incorporating AI as a teachability thing or as an entertainment thing?
As an entertainment, I'm sure, I mean, obviously, again, like video games is the difference between entertainment and toy play. I'm very familiar with AI. AI is a tool for solving problems, basically.
Right.
It can't ever replace a person.
Yeah.
But it can, it can solve math problems. It can generate, still images. It can, generate synopses of things, or like you can't just say, write me a, script like Star Wars. It's not going to do that. But it could give you like a 2-paragraph synopsis that you could then take and develop, again. So it's like a seed. It's a tool. Can that be used for toys? I could see it being used for educational purposes and for entertaining.
Right.
How you could take a tool that's used to solve problems and apply it to toy play, maybe there's something like, let me into the castle, like give me the secret word. The secret word is tuna fish.
Right.
Maybe things like that, where there's like sort of an interaction and a randomness. I mean, toy companies will figure it out if there's a way to do it, but it's not going to be something where AI is the entire toy. It's going to be like a component of it. Again, like a tool used to develop that play. So maybe someone will come up with something clever. My experience is AI is much more of a problem-solving tool than a actual, piece of content or piece of play. Yeah.
I was kind of thinking while you're talking about like as a tool and stuff. I was thinking of those those little those boxing, like they used to have like boxing thing. It'll be plastic and you'd use that to fight two people fighting. And then it was like if you there was like a futuristic version of that where it was CGI kind of thing, like a digital looking virtual thing. I wonder if like we could like because there's been debate about like a lot of discussion on this channel because I talk to a lot of creatives about AI and what the fears and stuff and the theft of IPs and like actual work, and then somebody just saying do me something like Art Spiegel, and now they've taken all of Art Spiegel's work and now they say this, now I'm going to sell that because it's a comic book now in the style of Art Spiegel. I was wondering like do you think with the problem solving, we could say, well, I'm stuck at this idea and I don't know how to solve that. Do you think the toy, you as a designer or someone like that working in that industry can go, hey, like they do with ChatGPT, can you please, because their brain, the computer's going to go work so fast. Do you think it's something useful as a tool to answer questions to make things easier in the crafting of toys, or the equipment, or like actual, how we go from silicon, now we go into molding and stuff like that. Stuff like what sort of plastics we could use. Do you think AI could do that for us, which is safer for us going forward or longer lasting? Because the reason I asked the question about longer lasting plastic, so because but like this thing started melting one day, and one of my my toy friend said that needs to go under UV light. I'm like, I didn't know that, because it started like melting away, these little things on it. I'm like, how did that fall apart? And because if somebody like me who doesn't know stuff like that, I wonder if like that could be solved by the little things like that. Like 10 years from now, AI, could you tell us what would happen if this is left in the, such and such, or the fading materials,
So, again, I
Sorry for
think
the long-winded question there, but like,
no, I mean, I think I could answer it in parts. One, we already know what happens to toys in 20, 30 years. Like how plastic erodes is documented, is scientifically studied. In fact, there's quite a lot of videos on my channel, Spector Creative,
right.
about why toys yellow
Excellent.
and why toys fade or lose parts, like how the scientifically the erosion or the breaking apart of brittle plastic. Toys were, especially those made in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s, were never meant to last. They were meant to be playthings. We treat them as museum artifacts. And, when you see your Captain Archer figure with the pants melting off, like, it's like, yeah, but, that toy is 20 years old. Enterprise was on when I was in college, so, that toy honestly was probably not meant to last this long. So using AI to be like, what type of plastic should I use so it doesn't melt? Like we can answer that without AI. Like we have those studies. AI could be used just like with any, mass production project, whether you're making toys or, industrial laundry parts. You can use AI to be like, what is the best plastic to use if I need this kind of tactile strength and this kind of flexibility. And it could work like a computer program to be like, oh, based on the inputs that you, a human, have put in, the computer program will say you should use ASM plastic 100.
Right.
You could look that up in a book too. It's like, again, AI is not coming up with ideas for toys. It could just solve equations.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of math in toys. You've got angles and you've got, things have to be so long to fit. So you could be like, yes, how long does this arm need to be in order to throw a projectile 7 feet? And it could help do the math. But again, you could also do that with a calculator and a piece of paper. So AI is a shortcut. It's not replacing ideas for toys. It's just like having another tool. Like you have a hammer, you have a screwdriver, you have your AI. It's just a tool. And I get why people are afraid that it's going to come along. But let me give you an example. Like, I mean, my book is drawn by AI. Okay. I hired an artist to, draw the characters' designs. So, based on my descriptions, but I couldn't afford to pay a page rate of, say $300 for 221 pages. I don't have that kind of money. I'm not artistic. I'm a writer. So I had the computer generate the book panel by panel, very time consuming. Most panels had to get rendered, anywhere from 25 to 100 times before they were acceptable. And there's huge limitations. AI can't keep characters on model. You can't render trademark characters like Spider-Man or Batman. So I used it as a tool to solve the fact that I didn't have, several $100,000 to pay an artist.
Sure.
But it's not, I didn't take any money away from an artist or cancel anyone's work because there was no money. There wasn't a job. I did pay, like I used whatever money I did have to pay real artists, and I got 20 pages of art. I used that as a tool then to help with the AI art, but that was the limit of my funds. I spent every penny I had and then filled in the gap. So again, it's, and it's not like, again, like no one lost out on a job because there was no help wanted. I need an artist because the job didn't exist. So, we're always going to need human artists. There were so many limitations to doing this. Keeping characters on model. Some panels Zeus has a Z on his chest. Sometimes it's an O. Like, you got to deal with that. But what I'm hoping is that the art is, shall we say, pretty enough that people will be forgiving and be like, oh, that's the story is cool. The art is, readable, beautiful. It's not like a mess. And, people will give it a try. It's on Amazon. It's $14. I understand the pushback on AI, but again, it was a tool. It helped me solve the problem of getting my book into print it took me 25 years. I've been trying to chop this around, trying to, find an artist to do it. A writer without artistic talent trying to publish a comic book is not an easy thing.
I mean, I think if this was available, maybe like if I'm being honest, right? If about 2011, maybe about 2011, I would have used it because at that time, I was doing a comic book and it was going to cost me 20 grand, right? this is New Zealand dollars, so American would be around about 15 grand to 10 grand. And I was like, and I found somebody who could do it for me for about $20 a page, and we got about 20 pages done. And then like I had a crash, and so lost the artist, lost myself, and then coming back now, we've been able to find someone who can do it, and so great art. But I think I would have done it. I think at that stage, I just wanted a comic made, but it was thankfully I had somebody who actually had within the price. But I also understand, like, somebody wanting $300 a page is ridiculous if it's your first book. And I think now there's enough artists available to actually work with, and also Kickstarter does that thing as well, right? Because with crowdfunding now you could go, hey, I'm writing a book, help me, this is what it is, these are like you said, the 20 pages. You could use the 20 pages to show your Kickstarter. That's why I love Kickstarter, because we're about to put another one out, and then you could say these are the artists, and I can carry on hiring that person. But I think I love the idea of like of having a personal AI assistant, who can having all your ideas in your head, and you say all these ideas to the AI, and then that AI can put that out in the way that's your voice, not the AI's voice or anybody else's voice. Do you think that's something you could, as someone who's creating content that you're creating, would love to see for yourself happen? Like I would like to chuck all my thousands of pages of writing that I've done over the last 20 odd years into AI and go, do it like me, and here's what I'm going to tell you. This is the idea. This is my spec. And that something that also as a writer, right? Because you've written a graphic novel as well with Myth Wars, but also with the helping with your toy, content creation and all that.
Honestly, personally, I don't think I'd want to do that. Have AI create my work. What I liked about this process, was, again, let's just take one single here. I'm going to pick out one panel. Let's find a panel. Okay, so, all right. So we've got a panel here of Gaia, goddess of the earth, creating a stone bridge that she's going to use to escape, right? So I would type into ChatGPT, please draw a green woman with flowing green hair, a white toga, creating, a rock bridge in her arms. Well, that one panel here, I had to render that 34 times before I got that. So I had 33 panels of crazy, bat blank nuts, things of her arm being a rock, things of her head being a tree. Like, who knows? So, the idea of just being able to tell an AI to like write this or draw this in my style and make, here's all the, I have like 10 books I've written like specs on that I have, buried deep in my hard drive. But the idea of the actual realistic expectation that AI could then take anything like that and turn it into something tangible is zero. That's not that it can't. And then the idea, would I want it to do that? No, because what I liked was, as I went along, not only when I finally get the panel I want, I would then place it on the page where I want it. Most, I know I keep going back to this, but I purposely did that. So here's an example of how all the different elements that had to go into making a page. I know it's a little hard to see on the screen there, but you can see it's tons of images, tons of, everything, all the way down to the balloons. All of that had to be cut, cropped, flipped, color adjusted. Sometimes I'd have to add extra elements on top, like capes or horns. So again, it's not AI doing the work. It's AI helping. It couldn't even create one page. It could barely create a panel. It couldn't create a panel. Like, I think maybe out of the 221 pages, maybe there's 2 panels in an entire book that I got right the first time. Like, I was like, whoa, it nailed it. Holy cow. Like, I remember that happening once or twice, but otherwise it was just a drudge of re-render. Okay, no, he doesn't have purple skin. Re-render. No, he doesn't have a mask on. re-rent, like it was, so it's not, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like then you I mean, like for me, like I work with artists all the time. So if I'm saying I want, like just this morning, like my manga artist, and we're gonna create about 7 characters. And I just went, and he said, "Oh, hey, do we have a reference for these?" Because he knows I always use references, images, and photos of places and stuff like that. He goes, "Do we have a folder with the references?" I said, "Give me 15 minutes." I Googled, I went through all these actors. I went like, "Oh, yeah, that." And then we went through and said, "Okay, this is who this is. This is who this is. Now take that and just do your thing with it." It's like never going to look like the same person. It's just the structure of the face and stuff like that. That would be done within about 4 or 5, checks. And like you're saying, like 30, that's like for me, that'll be stressful trying to work in like, 30 different renders to get that, when I could just say to the guy, "Hey, this one on that one, 3 images, and pick one out of the 3." I wonder, like, I mean, and that's why I like understand how you say I don't want that to create my stories, because there's a sense of like pride and accomplishments when you're doing it yourself, right? When you're writing, because you could do that quicker than the AI could do it, because you know in your head what you want right away. You don't have to keep asking somebody to tell you. Because I tried that myself. I went into ChatGPT and I went, "Okay, here's my 12-page idea that I have. Here's my 3 pages of it. Show me what I can do." And I had to take about 5 times before I even, and before it gave me what I thought would be okay. And then I went like, "No, I'm not even going to use that, because now it's taken out of my hand. It's not mine anymore, because now it's now the computer's, right?" Is that why you do think like you don't want that to be in control of what you're creating?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think like you said, any artist feels like that. I mean, yeah, I might have had AI render panels, but
Mm,
I put in more hours into this than probably almost any project I've done.
right,
Um, and this is my work. I mean, I'm proud that, but with the exception of like a double page spread, every one of those pages required lots of elements stitched together to look like it did,
right.
and that was yeah. So I wouldn't want to put my name on something that I just said, draw me this and sell it. Like
Yeah.
I didn't do anything. I no.
Yeah, that's what I find really interesting, because like I was listening to like there's, I think it was Film Threat had a filmmaker on, and he said all the top writers in Hollywood are using ChatGPT to write film scripts. And I'm like, I can tell, because they're all crap. Because I've learned, like I've studied filmmaking for 3 years, and I'm like, I can tell where all your what is it, beats are for each little script. I'm like, that's why it's so nobody's enjoying them anymore, because it looks like it's regurgitated stuff from other scripts. And that's why I think, like, yeah, not handing over your creativity is very important, because like a lot of people are saying, like Elon Musk said, like AI cannot create. It can just take and give you what is already there. It cannot reformulate something. I mean, it will reformulate something, but it won't create something new. And I think that's why, like, I think a lot of people, like you said, fear unnecessarily AI, because they think it's going to create. But at this point, it's not going to create. It's just regurgitating what humans have already created. With
Well,
that in mind, like, do you think, where do you see the toy industry going in creativity wise? You know?
um, where do I see the toy industry going? I mean, the toy industry is the biggest problem is costs, really.
Mm,
Product just costs too much now. Even for
yeah.
parents, for kids, for collectors, toys are having to be simplified. I think we're going to see a lot more, simple things. Um, it's a weird time. I mean, I don't know. I mean, kids, ever since smartphones, kids stopped living their own lives and just started watching others, and that's a big issue. Kids aren't playing the way they used to, and even we're seeing, adult collector figures getting, the costs are going up and the quality is going down. So, um,
Mm,
yeah, honestly, I like. Yeah, I mean, we also saw Hasbro, massive layoffs last year.
yeah.
Um, AI is not going to be the one that comes in and solves things.
Yeah.
Not to jump too off topic, but sort of also commenting on the last thing you were saying about AI and Elon Musk and everyone being afraid of it. When Excel first came out, everyone in the business world was in a panic that every accountant everywhere was now going to get fired.
Yeah.
Instead, it turns out that Excel is a tool that good accountants use to be great.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what AI is. We just have to get over the learning curve. The more you use it, the more you learn what it can do and what it can't. And it's no different than Excel being introduced to accountants. It didn't replace a single accountant out there. It just gave them a new tool, and it gave us a way to do simple, quick math. But I don't think anyone fired their accountant because they got really good at Excel. Maybe someone did, I don't know. But
yeah, I just had one of my artist friend get fired. It's like we have AI now, so we don't need you. The problem is they don't understand that they do need them because it's faster with them than with the AI, right? Because you still have to have somebody there going, this is what you got, the input part.
Yeah. If people are firing artists because they're like, we can use AI, then they're going to be rehiring those artists in a month because they're going to be like, oh shit, this doesn't work. Like, you might be able to replace like somebody who flips a burger with a robot arm that can flip a burger, like a mechanical action. Anything that takes human thinking, math, art, poetry, music, AI is there to help, just like a pen can help a writer express themselves.
Right.
AI can help someone express themselves, but it's not going to replace anyone. And if you're a company and you're firing people because you think you can bring AI in, you are shooting yourself in the foot. So good luck with that.
Now, in your years working with Hasbro and Mattel as well, were you working for both companies?
I worked for Mattel. I worked with Hasbro, but I've never worked directly for Hasbro.
Right. What sort of role were you with Hasbro? Was it like advisory with Toyetic or?
Oh, when I was working at Jada Toys, I worked on some licensed Hasbro product. That was the extent of my actual. I mean, I have a lot of friends that have worked for Hasbro, as everything from the president of the company all the way down to designers, but I haven't actually worked for them.
Okay, so with Mattel now, that's Barbie, right?
Yeah, Barbie, Hot Wheels, used to be Batman.
Yeah. So, what area, like, which lines did you work for with Mattel?
So I worked on, I mean, honestly, a little of everything. I spent 2 years in Hot Wheels, and then I moved over to the Boys Action Group, and I worked on their full DC portfolio, all like the Warner Brothers movies, Green Lantern, Dark Knight, Superman Returns. And then I was kind of the head captain of Matty Collector, which was the adult collector online experience that had DC, Masters of the Universe, He-Man, Back to the Future, Voltron. I worked on Cars for a little bit for Disney. I even worked on some Monster High and Barbie product. I mean, there's very few, at least I didn't get a little experience on. I definitely, got to work on a lot of brands.
Yeah. What was your role in there? Like, I mean, like a specific role for because you, like you said, diverse products there. So
for the majority of the time, the first 2 years I was a writer. But then I moved over into the marketing group, and in marketing, which is what I've done for the last 20 years, in the toy industry, it tends to be kind of the center hub. So you've got the marketing person, think of it like a wheel, and then all the spokes are your designer, your packaging designer, your safety person, your salesman, your retail group, your licensor, your factory, your vendors, and marketing is what, keeps the whole project going. And sometimes marketing gets to put a lot of their personal stamp on a product. Sometimes they just back off and just guide it through, the harbor. But it's the marketing person's kind of like the producer of a movie is the way to think of it.
Right.
You've got a director, you've got stars, you've got special effects. The director is the designer, the special effects is the painter, or the person who puts the action feature in, the engineer. So yeah, I was like a toy producer is what I was.
Did you is that like designing the boxes or the stuff like that side of side, or the patterns and all that, or was it actually like kind of the promotion side of things, like you're talking about producing,
Oh, it was everything. Yeah. From
right?
packaging to it was from B sheet to shelf, everything
Wow.
from the product to marketing, to shooting TV commercials, to doing YouTube videos and
Yeah.
podcasts and Facebook posts, to picking the color of the action figures accessory, like the whole 9 yards.
It's quite like a very diverse role. I mean, like seriously, that's a lot of hats you've worn for that.
Yeah, and I've been very lucky, and I've gotten some great experience, which has really helped my
Mm.
career, like, yeah, doing that. We are kind of I'm sorry, we're at about 60 minutes, and I have another client I
Yeah,
gotta run to. But yeah,
that's fine. Yeah,
it's really been a thrill, and I feel very honored to have gotten to be in the industry as long as I have.
right. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate it, Scott. Yeah, it's great to like hear that side of things, like toys and stuff like that. So is there like what I do here is like at the end of it, we give like 3 to 5 minutes and like words of wisdom and whatever you've learned, it's like somebody watching out there, something to impart onto them, young kid or adult, doesn't matter, but whoever is, could you do that for us as we finish here?
Sure, sure. My advice would be, if you have an idea for something, don't ever give up on it. The difference between success and failure are people who give up. Everything from Sherlock Holmes to Star Wars to the Beatles to Gone with the Wind was rejected over and over again. The people who succeed are the ones who just keep dusting themselves off and trying again. And then I would also say, for those of you who want to work in the toy industry, figure out what you want to do, what qualifications are needed to do that, and what professional experience is needed. I get a lot of people who just would come up to me at conventions and be like, hey, I want to work in the toy industry. I want to make toys. Great. What do you want to do? I don't know. I want to make toys. So, make some informational interviews. Find out what roles are, like we were talking about. There's a huge diverse number of roles that go into making any consumer product, toys or anything. So, learn if you want to get into the toy industry, have a specific goal and job that you're looking to do, and get the experience both educationally and professionally that you need. That would be my advice.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All the best for the future. And man, like I just really enjoyed this, learning so much about, seeing like, especially talking about the creation side, but also, thinking about the AI side of things as well, because like that's the biggest kind of like the subject nowadays. But having, I think a lot of people don't really think outside of it took my jobs and that's it, And so it's great to have a discussion like that about that. So thank you, Scott, and I really appreciate your time for us.
Oh,
All
thank
the
you.
best.
I
Yeah,
appreciate it as well. Yeah, the time to talk about that. It's a great subject to discuss.
awesome. Thank you so much. We'll catch you next time.
Glad to come on anytime.
Awesome. All right, guys, you can check out, let me just bring up this website here. You can check out Scott's Spector Creative. It's 1872. And you can also check out his website, which is Spector. There we go, spectorcreative.com. Lots of amazing stuff there. Lots of information, lots of info about his. I mean, if you really think about it, he wore so many hats, and I thought that was pretty cool. And show there is so many things out here like to be afraid of when it comes to AI. But at the end of the day, really, I mean, if I think AI can't create. That's all you got to understand, and you always will need humans to create. There's things can like that we do can be done quicker. Like I was mentioning about my artist, I could just go give me 3 designs of this and it's done. If I want the same thing from an AI, it's going to have to search. I'm going to have to keep inputting, and do I want that frustration? So join us later. I think we've got over the next couple of weeks. I've got 2 of my artists coming back on to sorry, are coming on. They haven't been on before, and so they'll be on our Wednesday. I think it's our Thursday program where we talk about. Let me just bring it up actually, where we talk about our the projects we're working on, and get to talk. You get to see who they are, and what projects they're working on, what they're bringing to the table, what styles they're bringing. Because when it comes to my, the people that are, artists, I choose them specifically for their art style. So this is, I'm going to show a couple here before we finish off here with at the end of this podcast. So you've got, you've got Tomas here, who's TC Rotier. Yeah, you've got him coming up on the 10th next weekend, and the week next week, sorry, on a Thursday, and the week after that, on the 17th, we have Joachim, who's from Sweden. So TC's from Argentina, but he's in Italy. I keep thinking he's from France. He's living in France, but he's actually in Italy. And then so we've got also, Joachim, who's in Sweden, right? And so he's got, he's working on a fantasy series. Received another 4 pages this morning, so I'm quite excited. So, one of his covers is going to be on the next Robot Nations comic book that we've got a standalone coming out, which I'll show you right now, which you can basically go right now and buy it for a couple bucks, price of a coffee, right, as we say. And so this is it here. So if you can go, you can go directly to there. It's mature content for this issue alone for, blood and gore, right? But the next issue, it's going to be a bit more adult content. So that's why we've got the mature readers thing. So the link's in the chat. Hopefully you guys can check it out. And, people have been giving me good feedback about it. And we're going to take that to Kickstarter soon. And as soon as we've got our Incredible comic into people's hands, we'll take that to that. So thank you for joining me wherever you are. Be well. And like I always say, if you got a loved one close to you, give them a hug and a kiss. You don't know how they are feeling. And, they might need that right now. And and if they're not close by, let them know by, we have so many means now, Facebook, Twitter, anything, cell phone, phone call, text message, messenger. Just let them know you care, because you don't know when they need that or when that might be the last time. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys checking us out. So have a good day. Ka kite ano. We'll see you soon. I'm going to do some art later on. So if you can join me then, we'll catch you then.